I thought raising 3 accomplished children would guarantee comfort and closeness in my later years. Instead, I found myself left behind in a cold, impersonal care facility, staring out the window as they drove off without so much as a backward glance. What they didn't know was that I had just inherited $7 million from my late sister, Judith. But I had no intention of telling them that. At least, not yet. I had something else in mind. Something that would redefine the meaning of visiting hours. Before we dive back in, let us know where you're tuning in from. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow, I've got something even more special lined up just for you. The sky was the color of old cotton, dull and heavy with a threat of rain that hadn't yet made good on its promise. Clara Emerson sat quietly in her worn armchair by the window, her packed suitcase by the door. The house smelled faintly of lemon polish and time, scents that clung to a place when the world had stopped changing around it. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't excited. She felt, mostly, resigned. Her children were late. Not by much, just enough to reinforce the pattern of recent years. Promises broken, calls missed, birthdays forgotten until belated texts arrived like afterthoughts. She'd raised them better than that. Or at least she used to believe she had. At 3:17, the dark grey sedan pulled into the driveway. Clara rose, brushing non-existent lint from her blouse. She stood straight, chin up. She would not greet them from a seated position like some forgotten statue. Daniel Emerson, the eldest, got out first, tall and confident in his suit jacket and tie. He was always performing, even when there was no audience. Lena, her middle child, stepped out of the passenger seat with her usual air of efficiency, phone in hand, expression neutral. Rachel, the youngest, barely looked up from the back seat. She offered a half-hearted wave before returning her attention to whatever glowed on her screen. They didn't knock. Clara opened the door before they could. "Hi, Mom," Daniel said. "You ready?" Clara glanced at her suitcase. "Apparently." He smiled awkwardly. "You're going to love this place. They've got a whole activity schedule, bingo nights, art classes, even movie screenings." "I prefer my own books," Clara said dryly. Lena cut in. "It's not about entertainment, Mom. You need care. After the fall, I tripped over a scatter rug. Twice," Lena added. "And you were alone both times." Rachel finally spoke from the doorway. "It's not forever. Just until we know you're safe." Clara didn't respond. She just stepped outside, suitcase in hand, and locked the door behind her. She'd lived in that house for 43 years. Raised her children there. Buried her husband from there. And now she was leaving, not by choice, but by consensus. They drove in silence. No music. No conversation. Only the sound of Daniel's fingers tapping on the steering wheel and Rachel's intermittent phone notifications. As they pulled into the manicured driveway of Hollowbrook Assisted Living, Clara looked out at the building with its neat stone facade and bright signage. Cheerful enough from the outside. It was the kind of place built to make adult children feel less guilty. Daniel parked close to the entrance. "Let's get you checked in," he said. She hated that word. Checked in. Like a guest. Like she had no more claim to permanence. The reception was polished and impersonal. A woman in a pastel blazer handed Clara a welcome packet without making eye contact. Daniel signed paperwork, Lena scanned through documents on a tablet, and Rachel stayed seated, still scrolling. No one asked how Clara felt. No one asked what she wanted. 15 minutes later, her suitcase had been rolled to her room. Daniel said, "We'll visit soon." "How soon is soon?" she asked. "Soon," he said vaguely. And then they left. Just like that. Clara's room was clean, functional, and utterly sterile. The walls were a muted beige. The curtains patterned in forgettable pastels. A laminated list of community rules sat on her dresser, including quiet hours and guest protocols. She unpacked herself. Slowly. Methodically. It gave her something to do. Her neighbors introduced themselves within days. Frank, a retired history professor who liked to quote ancient philosophers. Marjorie, who wore pearls to breakfast and called everyone darling. And Nina, sharp as a tack, who'd long since given up hope of anyone visiting her. Once they drop you off, Nina said bluntly, they don't come back. Not really. Not enough. Clara didn't want to believe her. She waited for the phone to ring. It didn't. Not the first week. Not the second. On day 15, she received a text from Rachel. Hey, how's the new place? Sorry we haven't come by. Work's been crazy. Clara replied with a single word. Fine. It would be 3 weeks before Daniel visited, just long enough to feel performative. He stayed for 22 minutes, checking his watch twice. He brought flowers, but forgot to bring a vase. Lena sent a belated birthday card. No gift. No call. No return address. Nina had been right. Then, a letter arrived. Heavy envelope. Cream paper. A law firm's return address from Vermont. Her sister Beatrice, long estranged, had passed away quietly in her lakeside cottage. They hadn't spoken in nearly 10 years, not since Beatrice accused Clara of being too passive, too willing to be sidelined by her children. Now Beatrice had left her entire estate to Clara. Not out of sentimentality, but purpose. $6.8 million. The shock was immediate. The implications, staggering. And with them came a single, devastating thought. What would my children do if they knew I had this money? Would they visit more? Would they try to move her out? Would they offer to help manage it? No. They would circle like sharks. And so, Clara told no one. Instead, she contacted Stratton and Bryce, the same firm Beatrice had used. She spoke with a consultant about investments. She asked about businesses. Quietly, cautiously. Then she asked about Hollow Brook. It turned out the facility had been on the brink of a silent acquisition by a chain known for cutting staff and maximizing profits. Clara made a counteroffer. 3 weeks later, the papers were signed. She was no longer a resident. She was the owner. She didn't change much at first. Staff were curious. Residents whispered. But Clara walked the halls with purpose now, not passivity. She met with department heads. She listened. She took notes. And then she announced a new policy. Effective immediately. Families who do not visit at least twice a week will be limited to Sunday visiting hours, 2 to 4 p.m. No exceptions. The staff gasped. The residents applauded. The phones started ringing before the ink dried on the memo. Lena called first. Mother, what is this nonsense? We have lives. Clara replied coolly. So do I. Rachel texted. Is this a joke? We can't drop by whenever now. Clara didn't respond. Daniel came in person. He barged into the newly refurbished conference room, demanding answers. You're not the administration, he said. She smiled gently. I am now. Daniel looked between Clara and the facility manager, disbelief coloring his face. You bought this place? Clara folded her hands in her lap, calm and composed. Yes. But, how? Beatrice left me everything, she said. And I decided to use it where it would make a difference. Hollow Brook was a place people were left to fade away. I'm changing that. Daniel stared. You used inheritance money to punish us? Clara's voice was measured, but unyielding. This isn't punishment, Daniel. It's incentive. If families want access to their parents, they have to actually show up. Not for holidays. Not for birthdays. But regularly. He gave a disbelieving chuckle. That's outrageous. It's legal, the facility manager added softly. As the owner, she sets policy. But it targets us. It applies to everyone, Clara said. If other families feel slighted, they can choose to show up, too. He was silent for a beat. Then he sat down, the confidence in his shoulders collapsing into exasperation. So what now? You're going to ration time with our mother like visiting hours in prison. I'm giving you a choice, Clara said. Come twice a week and you get open access. Continue as you are, and Sundays from 2 to 4 is all you get. What about work? Daniel protested. Lena has the firm. I run a company. Rachel's freelancing. I raised you, Clara interrupted, her voice rising for the first time. I drove carpools, packed lunches, helped with science projects and sat in ERs at 2 a.m. I did that while working nights and managing a home. Don't tell me about being busy. His mouth opened, then closed again. You didn't even call me for 2 weeks after I moved in here, she added. I counted. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. What do you want from us? I want to matter, she said simply. Not as an obligation. As your mother. A heavy silence settled in the room. Finally he said, I need to talk to Lena and Rachel. Of course, Clara said. Just remember, visiting hours are Sundays only until then. He stood up. You've really gone off the rails, you know that? No, she said, standing as well. I finally got back on track. 2 days later, Rachel showed up, unannounced and annoyed. She wore sunglasses indoors and carried a bag from an expensive boutique, clearly meant to convey she'd just been too busy to visit earlier. Mom, she said, pulling off her sunglasses. This is ridiculous. Clara offered her tea, which Rachel declined. Did Daniel tell you? Rachel asked. Yes. About your confusion regarding the new policy. Confusion. Rachel laughed bitterly. You've weaponized loneliness. No, Clara said. You did. I just removed the illusion that everything was fine. Rachel blinked, surprised. So now we jump through hoops for access. You decide what effort your mother is worth. I simply reflect your decision back to you. Rachel stared at her, some mix of resentment and dawning comprehension on her face. This is control. Clara looked at her youngest daughter, once sweet and so eager to please. It's consequence. The next week, Lena arrived. Calm, polished, direct as always. She didn't waste time. This ends now. Clara nodded. Then visit twice a week. I'm not rearranging court dates to prove I care about you. Clara held up a file. This is the schedule for every resident whose family doesn't meet the standard. You're not being singled out. Lena's jaw tightened. But you planned this. You knew we wouldn't come often. You were counting on it. Clara didn't blink. No. I hoped I was wrong. Silence. Then Lena asked, how much did Beatrice leave you? Enough to ensure I never need to depend on your convenience again. Lena scoffed. You don't even want the money, do you? This isn't about finances. It's about guilt. No, Clara said softly. It's about love. And how it disappears when it's not fed. Lena closed her briefcase with a snap. You've changed. Clara smiled. No. You just stopped listening long ago. That Sunday, all 3 children arrived. Together. Daniel looked sheepish. Rachel, nervous. Lena, cool but clearly conflicted. We've been talking, Daniel began. We've made mistakes, Lena admitted. Rachel nodded. You were right, Mom. Clara's eyes brimmed with tears she didn't let fall. We want to do better, Lena said. But we're going to need your help. Clara folded her arms, her voice steady. It's simple. You show up. You stay longer than 15 minutes. You bring your children. You don't treat me like a forgotten calendar reminder. And in return, I lift the restrictions. And if we don't? Rachel asked. Then we continue exactly as we are. Sundays only. No exceptions. They nodded slowly. Daniel offered a hesitant smile. What if we actually want to be here now? Clara sat down, motioning to the chairs across from her. Then let's begin. 1 week passed before Clara heard anything more. And when the knock came on her office door, a space she now used regularly for facility oversight and meetings, it was Jessica, the facility coordinator. "Mrs. Avery," she said gently, "your children are here. All 3 of them." Clara closed the ledger she'd been reviewing and stood up slowly. "Did they say why?" Jessica smiled faintly. "They asked if you'd be willing to meet with them." Clara glanced at the clock. 3:45 p.m. Not Sunday. Not 2 to 4. Interesting. "Tell them I'll be there shortly." In the newly renovated community room, once cold and clinical, now warm with soft light and earthy tones, Clara found them waiting. Daniel stood when she entered, awkward but respectful. Rachel fiddled with a bracelet, clearly uncomfortable. Lena sat with her arms crossed but nodded slightly. Clara took the open seat they'd left for her. Lena spoke first. "We've been going over everything. The schedule. The policies. The inheritance. Your letter. You read it?" Clara asked. "I did," Daniel said. "Several times." "I still think you overplayed your hand," Rachel muttered, then quickly added. "But I get it now. Or I'm starting to." "We spoke with a counselor," Lena said. "A family systems specialist." "That's a first," Clara said, not unkindly. "She asked us," Daniel continued, "how we thought you felt, being left here the way you were. Whether we believed we were really doing what was best for you, or just what was easiest for us." "And?" Clara asked, curious. Rachel's voice was soft. "We didn't like our own answers." Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken regret. "We want to do better," Lena said. "Not to appease you, but because we should have before." "We've written a proposal," Daniel added, pulling out a neatly typed document. "A rotating schedule. One of us comes every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. We each take a day. No excuses. We've blocked off the time in our calendars." Clara raised an eyebrow. "For how long?" "Indefinitely," Lena replied. Rachel added, "We also want to contribute. Not just to you. To the community here." Daniel nodded. "I'm offering free repair workshops, helping residents fix small electronics, clocks, whatever they have. Something I do with Dad's old tools." "I'll offer legal advice," Lena said. "Wills. Advanced directives. I can help people understand their rights." "I'll do art sessions," Rachel said. "I'll bring supplies and guide people through painting, drawing, whatever helps express." Clara didn't speak for a moment. Her throat was too tight. "You don't have to say yes now," Daniel said quickly. "We'll follow the Sunday rules until you believe we've changed." Clara studied their faces. She saw the tension, the guilt, but more importantly, resolve. And something else. Humility. "You understand this isn't about making up for lost time," Clara said. "Some of that time is gone. We don't get it back." They nodded. "But if you truly want to build something new, we can start there." Relief flashed in their eyes. "Starting this Friday," Clara added, "we'll have dinner together. Here. You'll join the residents. Meet the staff. Share this place with me, not as guests, but as part of the community." "We'd like that," Daniel said. "I'll be here," Lena agreed. "Me too," Rachel said, smiling for the first time that day. Clara rose to leave, then paused. "One more thing," she said. "If you ever fall back into old habits, I'll know. But this time, I won't wait for years to speak up." They nodded again, more seriously now. As Clara stepped out into the hallway, Jessica caught her eye. "How did it go?" she asked. Clara smiled, small but real. "We're beginning." The following Sunday they returned, on time, dressed neatly, carrying nothing but themselves and a quiet determination. Clara greeted them in the main lounge, where soft music played and a few residents chatted over tea. This time, her children didn't hang back awkwardly. They stepped forward, greeted staff members by name, and joined in conversations without needing prodding. Daniel helped Robert adjust the leg of his walker. Rachel complimented Margaret on her crocheted scarf, asking about the pattern. Lena struck up a conversation with Harold about his time as a high school principal. Clara watched it all unfold, half waiting for the awkward pause, the discomfort to reappear. But it didn't. During dinner, the four of them sat together at a large round table, joined by two other residents and their families. Clara had made sure of it. This wasn't going to be a private reunion. It was a step toward becoming part of a wider community. After dessert, Daniel stood and tapped his glass with a spoon. The room quieted. "I just want to say something," he said. "To everyone here. My mother changed this place. She gave it heart, and she made all of us, especially her children, take a long hard look at who we've become. And who we still have the chance to be." Lena rose beside him. "We failed her," she said without flinching. "Not just by leaving her here without support, but by failing to see her as a full person, one who deserved our time, not just our money or approval." Rachel cleared her throat. "We don't expect forgiveness overnight. But we're here now. And we'll keep being here. Not just for our mother, but for all of you. If you'll let us." Applause started at one table and then rippled outward. Clara didn't clap. She sat still, listening, watching. Later, in her room, Daniel stayed behind to help Clara clean up after the event. As he folded tablecloths and stacked chairs, he said, "It's weird. I thought coming back would feel like failure. But it doesn't. It feels like clarity." Clara didn't respond immediately. She watched his hands as they worked. Hands that had built fences, repaired doors, held her grandchildren when they were babies. "Daniel," she said finally, "when you were 5, you used to follow me into the kitchen every morning. You'd sit on the counter while I made coffee and talk about dinosaurs. Every morning. Rain or shine." He smiled. "I remember. And then you stopped." He blinked. "I guess I got older." "Yes," Clara said. "But you didn't have to stop." He looked at her, something tightening behind his eyes. "I'm sorry I stayed away so long, Mom." "I know. But you're here now." They stood in silence for a moment longer. Then Clara added, "Same time next week?" Daniel nodded. "Same time next week." And so it began, not a dramatic transformation, but something slower, quieter, sturdier. A rebuild. One visit at a time. You said. A bit longer. ChatGPT said. Of course. Here's a continuation of part 4, extended and enriched slightly for greater depth and emotional closure. The following Sunday they returned, on time, dressed neatly, and carrying not gifts or excuses, but something deeper, a quiet, determined willingness to show up. Clara met them in the main lounge, where soft classical music drifted from hidden speakers and residents sipped afternoon tea. The light through the large windows was gentle, casting the room in a golden glow that softened even the hardest faces. This time, her children didn't hesitate at the threshold. They stepped in and sought her out with purpose. Rachel brought flowers, not extravagant, just a small bouquet from her own garden. "For the communal table," she said, laying them beside the checkerboard without fuss. Daniel, who once couldn't make time for a phone call, bent down to adjust Robert's walker, noticing one leg was uneven. Lena handed Margaret a book of crossword puzzles and asked if she needed a partner for bingo later. Clara watched them from her armchair, her knitting needles paused in midair. For the first time in what felt like decades, she saw them behaving not like people checking an item off their guilt list, but like human beings. Present, sincere, uncertain but open. She didn't smile, not yet. But something in her chest, something long locked away, softened just a little. During dinner, they sat together at a round table, joined by 2 other residents and their visiting families. Clara had insisted it not be a private gathering. This wasn't a reconciliation to be tucked away in a corner. It was to be witnessed, lived out loud, offered as an example that yes, people could still change. They just had to want to. As dessert, a simple peach cobbler was being served. Daniel stood and gently tapped the side of his glass with a spoon. The room fell silent. "I want to say something," he said, glancing at his sisters, then at his mother. "To all of you. My mom changed this place. She changed us. She didn't do it by yelling or begging. She just drew a line. She showed us that if we wanted to be part of her life, we had to actually show up. And not just show up, but mean it." Lena stood beside him, her voice clear. "We failed her. Not just by dropping her off here without real discussion, but by assuming she would always be okay, always forgive, always wait for us. We were wrong. And we're trying to be better now. Not just for her, but for ourselves. For what kind of people we want to be." Rachel stepped forward last, her voice gentler. "We won't pretend one Sunday dinner fixes everything. But we're going to keep coming back. Because we love our mom. And because we want to be people who act like it." There was a moment of silence. And then, quiet applause. A few tears. Clara didn't clap. She didn't need to. Her silence said more than any cheer could. Later that evening, Daniel lingered behind to help clean up. He folded linens while Clara sat nearby, watching him the way she used to when he was little. Curious, wary, and proud all at once. "You know," she said, "when you were 5, you used to sneak into the kitchen every morning. You'd sit on the counter and talk about dinosaurs while I made coffee." He chuckled. "I remember. I made you late to work more than once." "I never minded," she replied softly. "But one day, you just stopped coming." He looked down at the tablecloth in his hands. "I guess I got older." "You did," she agreed. "But it didn't mean you had to stop showing up." He looked at her now, really looked at her. His mother. Smaller than he remembered. Older, but somehow stronger too. "I'm sorry, Mom. For how long it took." She nodded, not with judgment, but with quiet acknowledgement. "So am I. But you're here now." He placed the folded cloth on the chair beside her and straightened. "Same time next week." "Same time next week," she confirmed. As he walked away, Clara turned to the window, watching the last of the guests and their families saying goodbye in the newly landscaped garden. It wasn't a grand redemption. It wasn't a movie ending. But it was real. It was steady. It was a beginning. A beginning built, one visit at a time. Weeks passed. The rhythm of Sunny Acres had changed, not just in its paint or policies, but in its spirit. Clara's children visited regularly now, each in their own way. Lena came early on Tuesdays, bringing muffins and joining in on the poetry group even though she'd never written a poem in her life. She listened more than she spoke and sometimes stayed late to walk Clara back to her room. Rachel visited during gardening hours on Thursdays. She'd take off her heels, pull her hair back with a rubber band, and help residents plant herbs or repot succulents. Her laugh, once tight with stress, had softened. Daniel often brought his tools. On Sundays he fixed leaky faucets, squeaky wheels, or broken lamps. But more than anything, he listened. He asked questions. He told stories. He even started hosting a workshop once a month to teach basic repair skills to residents who wanted to keep their independence a little longer. Clara observed all of it. Not with judgment anymore, but with measured hope. She no longer waited by the window to see if they'd come. She knew they would. And when they didn't, they called. Not just to say they were busy, but to talk, to laugh, to connect. One Friday afternoon, Clara sat in the newly renovated common room reviewing staff schedules. Nancy, her most trusted aide, knocked gently and entered. "We've got something for you." Clara looked up. "We?" Nancy smiled and stepped aside. The door opened wider. In walked 3 teenage girls holding portfolios and standing just a little too straight to be casual. Behind them, Rachel followed, beaming. They're from the local high school. The community outreach group. They've designed a program proposal to pair students with residents for storytelling and history archiving. Rachel's been helping them shape it. Clara raised an eyebrow. An intergenerational oral history project. One of the teens stepped forward, clearly rehearsed but passionate. We want to record the life stories of residents here, write them down, maybe even make a podcast. So their experiences don't get lost. So they're remembered. Clara leaned back in her chair and nodded slowly. Tell me more. The girls spoke, one after another, their ideas tumbling out with youthful enthusiasm. Clara saw in them the kind of initiative she used to dream about seeing in her own children. And now, her children were part of creating that space. By the time they left, the project had a pilot plan, a timeline, and an enthusiastic sponsor. Clara sat quietly after the room had emptied. She thought of Catherine, her sharp-witted sister, long gone but never really absent. I hope you see this, Clara whispered, not knowing if she was speaking to the memory or the spirit. You were right. They needed a reason. And now they have one. That evening, as she took her usual stroll through the garden, she paused near the bench where Margaret and Harold often sat. Margaret waved her over. Your Daniel fixed my wheelchair brakes, she said. And Lena helped me write a letter to my daughter. Clara smiled. They're finally starting to understand. Margaret nodded. I never thought a family could rebuild after that much damage. You proved me wrong. Clara looked up at the soft pink horizon. I didn't rebuild it alone. I just stopped waiting for them to care enough. And started demanding they do. Didn't they resent that? Clara considered the question. At first. But sometimes love needs consequences before it finds its courage. Margaret reached over, squeezed her hand. I hope my girls get there too. Clara squeezed back. Now they have a map. She stayed outside after sunset, until the garden lights blinked on and the crickets began their evening chorus. The air was cool, the earth fragrant. She felt tired, but not in the way she used to. This was a good kind of tired, the kind earned from doing something worthwhile. Not dramatic. Not flashy. Just human and hard and full of meaning. Inside, the staff was changing shifts. Laughter echoed from the kitchen. Someone played the piano in the rec room, off-key but confident. Life, Clara thought, had found its rhythm here again. Tomorrow, there would be meetings. Plans. Another round of counseling with her children. More battles, no doubt, with budget approvals or reluctant families. But tonight, under the stars, she let herself believe. Things don't have to end broken. Not when you're brave enough to start again.